All right.
Okay.
So, welcome to Discussing Altered States. We kind of get into topics related to altered states in mental health. And altered states can be the definition of like the traditional types of diagnoses, which tends to use schizophrenia and psychosis. My hope is that's the last time you'll hear that term, maybe, at least from my mouth. Also, spiritual experiences and beliefs that maybe others don't feel are accurate, which again doesn't imply that either one has a right perspective or the truth. My name is Chelsea. I'm a licensed psychologist in California. I work in private practice and I work only with individuals who've gone through altered states. And that could be currently or in the past. And I also work with family members. But my main focus is psychodynamic psychotherapy and really incorporating compassion and respect to the person with the lived experience. I want to make a disclaimer. This is not therapy. This is only informational. If you feel like you're having a psychiatric emergency, please immediately contact 988, or for an emergency, you can call 911. And again, obviously those have risk, but we want people to feel safe in the world. And I want to clarify that we're talking about experiences, but I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable or regret sharing any information. And I definitely am not trying to sensationalize people's experience. So if anyone has any other questions, you can go to the website, which is growingthroughalteredstates.com. It's a very long term, but still. Today, I want to introduce Pat Wright, who is a wonderful person who I've known for, oh my gosh, maybe 10 years now, maybe longer. Right? I don't really.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time. We must have met at a conference. An ISPS conference, most likely. Did you go to the International in 2015?
I believe so. It depends on which one it was.
Well, it was in New York.
We met on the East Coast first, yes.
Yeah, that seems a long, long time ago. Yeah.
But it was lovely. And in fact,
Yes.
when I met you, and I know I love this story, when I met you, you were presenting to the ISPS conference, so about 250 people in the audience, and you were expressing loudly what your opinion was of how your family had been treated by the mental health. And I was instantly like, oh, I adore her. Absolutely adore her. So do you want to describe a little bit about like who you are or what life has been?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Chelsea. I'm always looking for support around my deviance, like it's helpful. I'm aware as I've gotten older, it seems like I have more freedom to be able to be who I am and whatnot. So I'm Pat Wright, and I am in Minneapolis, and this is January 2026. So I feel like, I'm really happy to be here. I really look forward to talking with you today. You are one of my favorite people at the conferences. I mentioned that I have missed you the last couple. Like, where's Chelsea? Like, where is she? Does anyone know where she is? Like, why is she not here? And I understand life, takes on after we make our plans, and it doesn't always work out the way we want it to. But I'm really glad to be here today. I feel like you're such a compassionate person. I'm just thrilled when I've heard you talk, and it's been a long time. And so here we are today. I'm repeating myself. Okay.
That's allowed.
So what else do we want to know about Pat? I am a family member of many people that have various diagnoses, including, parents, grandmother. My mother was adopted, but in the 90s, we found her mother, and she had her diagnoses, and my kids at different times, siblings. It's just been part of my life for a long, long time. And not to leave myself out of the equation, I've had my own experiences of unusual beliefs and hearing voices and, not sure exactly what's going on.
Right. And that is,
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing is it's so common. People tend to not talk about those types of experiences, but actually 1 out of 10 adults in the world will hear or see things that others don't. Only 1 in 100 is actually going to have a diagnosis related to it. So we got to remember, these are such common experiences that most people assume, oh my gosh, this means bad or this means problem. It doesn't necessarily mean that at all. And if we have a place that we can talk about it with compassion, it can go in such a different direction. So
And
yeah,
that's so important
yeah.
because I love now, I've been hearing, maybe you have too, about, especially during COVID, when the counselors and therapists and whatnot, there was a real shortage. And so there were these training programs, and I can't remember if it was Michigan or which state it was specifically, and probably multiple states, and I hope they've gotten more popular since then, where they started training the students, and the students that were asked by their peers, who would you go to if you had a problem and you were struggling, like who would you trust? And after they were identified by their own peers, which is wonderful, then they trained those students on how to, have good listening skills with their peers, and maybe what to do if somebody was really struggling and having a problem, not to be reporting anybody, but for them to be able to be helpful to their friends, and then their friends would have those skills to be helpful to other friends. And I just thought somebody's using their brain here. Yes. Why? That makes so much sense. Let's just do that everywhere.
Yeah. So often anything that seems out of the norm is met by harshness, judgment, or trying to push it down. So the opportunity for anyone to be met, no matter what they're going through, altered state or not, to be met by gentleness and listening and, a soft landing. So wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that.
Makes such a difference. And
Yeah.
I think what happened for me, particularly with the adventures I've had with some family members, is I got really sick in the early 90s after I was wrapping up my education, had 2 little kids, and physically my health just gave out, and there was a lot of stress going on at the time. And I know you and I have talked about this. And I was on IV nutrition. I was really anemic. And fortunately, in Minneapolis, that long ago, it still kind of shocks me. There was a nonprofit where the people were doing energy work, and they were doing craniosacral. They were doing, some massage. They were having groups on attitudinal healing, was what was popular back in the 90s. And it was just this wonderful supportive place. It was free, and people could go there. And I had the pleasure of being in on it from the very beginning, even before I was having health issues. And then once I started, really getting sick and having to go to the doctor to figure out, what these symptoms were. So I would go to the doctor, and then I would go to, it was called Pathways. And the healers there would say, well, there are the hardcore drugs, but if you can change things with nutrition, because it was a lot of digestive issues, you can always take those drugs down the road because they have pretty serious consequences to them.
Right.
And I thought, well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, part of me did want to fix, but the way that they were talking to me, like, I mattered. I was important.
Right.
I deserved care. There
Right.
wasn't a rush. There wasn't like, you have to decide this or that or the other thing in so much time. And when I went to the doctors, it was, okay, Mrs. Wright, me at the time. If you don't want to take these pills, there are other people waiting down the hall. And I thought, well, more power to them. And I just, so I adapted a pretty, compassionate, gentle approach to illness and limitations and health crisis, and I was there every week for years. And then I began volunteering there because it was such a
Yeah.
sacred atmosphere.
Right.
Everybody felt so good going there because there was like this total acceptance of so many things that out in the world, there's good and bad and there's right and wrong. And this was just, I used to tell people it was like what heaven would be like,
Oh,
with all these angels there. And during my 20s, I had some, shall I talk about, where should we go now, Chelsea?
well, here's my question. If you
Yeah,
want to keep going with what you're describing, we can. Or if you want to jump into maybe why don't we start with the first kind of main question we were going to get into and see where that goes.
sure.
We'll have to probably start in a few minutes if that'll work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right.
Sounds good.
So the main question I wanted kind of to get into today, at least, was what do you believe about altered states? Very open-ended. What do you believe about altered states?
Yeah. Well, altered states are altered states, aren't they?
Right.
It's like, who gets to say when a non-altered state is?
Right. And
That's my question.
people definitely try to. People definitely try to say what is a non-altered state? What is an altered state? Yeah.
Yeah. And, some people think that there's a continuum that, once you get to one end, it's like, okay, this is normal. And then there's this, space supposedly on the continuum that's considered normal. And then if you go beyond that, it's not. And, that just doesn't make sense to me because we're all so different. We all have such different opinions and ideas. We come from different places. How can anybody put like the definition on quote unquote reality or normal or that's what I think about that.
I appreciate it. I wonder, what would you say then, kind of the second piece to that is, what do you believe causes a quote unquote altered state, or what someone might define as an altered state?
Well, I think we come into the world with our personalities and, we grow up with the people that are around us. I think there's so many influences on, how we become the people that we are.
Mhm.
And, culturally, if we grow up in a religion, our values, it's, like people in, they say less developed countries, but who's deciding that? Their rates of, they don't have a lot of the medications that supposedly the developed world
Right.
does, and yet a lot of people are doing so much better there because they're kept in their community.
Right.
And they're accepted in their community.
Yeah.
And, if we're going to set people apart and tell them they're different and lock them up and force them to take medication, that creates a whole nother persona there.
Well, I think it's really interesting. So the World Health Organization did 2 studies in the 70s. They did a study and it showed that third world countries had far superior recovery rates, quote unquote, recovery rates for altered states. And it was so hotly debated that they redid the study several years later because people truly were just dismissing it as error. They found the exact same thing. And now what they're finding is that the more countries get medication, the standard Western style of psychiatric medication, the worse the outcomes are. So it's really this intriguing piece. And there's so many pieces to it. However, I'm going to stop us here for today because we had less time.
Okay.
First of all, I want to thank you. It is so good to see you.
Oh, you too. Absolutely. And thank you for inviting me on. I feel honored to be a part of your project.
I'm loving it. My hope is that we'll get to talk some more about maybe in a month or so, and we'll kind of keep going. And then also just to the listener, I want to thank them for even being interested, because our goal is really how to help invite more compassion into anyone who's gone through an altered state or anyone who understands what that can be like. We deserve a lot more support and kindness. So
absolutely.
Thank you to them. And Pat, hold on just one second and I will stop this recording. And
bless you.
Talk soon.